Welcome to Fudge Muppet, my name is Scott, and out of the 21 skills in Oblivion, these are the 6 worst ones. Before I start tearing into the list, let it be known that while these skills are what I would consider the 6 worst picks, this is only from the perspective of power gaming or maximizing a build without any regard for role-playing. We here at Fudge Muppet love role-playing builds, and we have several on the channel already for Oblivion Remastered, so you can check those out and subscribe for more to come. And look, some of those builds will actually use these mentioned skills and pick them as majors for role-playing purposes, or just because they're really cool. Remember, the following worst skills are essentially those that rank lower than all the others, and what determines their placement in this bottom 6 really is a number of factors, including their usefulness and effectiveness, but also another important consideration is their redundancies, which can happen via artifacts or spells, for example. Ultimately, you can get any skill you like to 100. The main factor is going to be the time it takes to get it, and hence the time you are willing to invest to get it to that level. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Let's get into it. I wanted to start off with some of the low-hanging fruit. Security. The security skill is all to do with helping you crack open those locks with a minigame in order to get that sweet loot from a chest, or perhaps to get through a certain door or locked area. In principle, getting into places you want to get into is very valuable for pretty much all characters, and especially so for a thief or an assassin type build. However, unfortunately, the security skill is largely redundant for a few big reasons. The punishment for failing to set a tumbler in the minigame is to break a lockpick. For starters, I will say that lockpicks aren't exactly rare. You can leave the sewers with over 40, and they are commonly found on bandits and goblins. They are what I would consider a relatively accessible resource. In the early game, most of the locks that you will be encountering are going to be very easy, and occasionally some average will be thrown in. The minigame is not that hard to do, especially for very easy through to average difficulty locks. What's more is that accessible right across from the Imperial waterfront, there is the Tower Stone, which when activated at night gives you some additional greater powers. This does not affect your birth sign. One of these powers is the Warden's Key, which allows you to unlock a hard lock once per day. Even the abundance of lockpicks and the easy access of this Heaven Stone are enough to consider second guessing picking security as a major skill. However, what's more is that by level 10 there is a very easy Daedric quest to complete that becomes accessible. If you go to this location here in the Blackwood region at level 10, you can speak to Nocturnal at the shrine, no offering needed, and she will give you a very simple quest that involves you going to a cave and retrieving her eye. In return for this, you'll be given the Skeleton Key, which functions as an unbreakable lockpick, and it adds 40 to your security skill while it is in your inventory. From here on out, all you have to do is go pick a lock, spam the auto attempt button, and voila, every single character with this artifact may as well be a master of security. The artifact alone makes literally any character with it just as effective as any master thief who has honed their security skills since birth. In function, both can bypass very hard locks and get into any chest or through any door that they desire. It feels like a waste picking security as a major skill because you are this crafty assassin, and then your mate who picked a warrior type build is just as effective as you because of the Skeleton Key, without focusing on security as a skill at all. Arguably, even from a role-playing perspective, it would make sense that a thief would want access to a powerful Daedric artifact from Nocturnal, which allows them to go anywhere they want to. It just feels like a waste to select security as a major skill, meaning it levels fast, which means another skill lost out, just to get the Skeleton Key, which essentially makes the skill irrelevant. So unless you just really enjoy the minigame or want a bit of a challenge, there really is no reason to not get the Skeleton Key. You may also say, well, this is only because of an artifact, which is true to some extent, but we also find that mages are basically just as effective. While a thief with no Skeleton Key may have pumped up their skill to master and feel really cool cracking all these very hard locks with more ease than others, A mage with an alteration skill level of 75 can make a spell to open a very hard lock and do the same stuff as the thief, but if anything quicker because they don't even have to play the minigame. Consider also that mages with the alteration skill will also be able to open average locks at skill level 50 and easy locks at apprentice, meaning even a character that just picks alteration as a major skill leaves the sewers with an open very easy lock spell and then can purchase the open easy lock spell and use it straight away without even increasing their skill to take advantage of it. But by investing in alteration, the mage also gets access to feather spells, shield spells, water walking, water breathing, and burden, all of which have many additional applications. Hell, a thief picking alteration as a major skill instead of security is such an advantage. For starters, they can open up to easy locks with spells straight out the gate, and by getting it to journeyman, they will have access to opening average locks, and to be honest, you only need to get to level 10 until you get the skeleton key after that. But even if no skeleton key, if you take alteration to 75, you can then make a simple open very hard lock spell, and now you can get into anything with a simple button press, but you get access to the other beneficial effects of the alteration magic school, most especially feather spells, which functionally increase your carry weight, meaning you can steal more stuff in one go without being encumbered and hence be a more efficient thief. In summary, security is not a good choice for a major skill because it is made redundant by both the skeleton key artifact, which is easily accessible at level 10, and the alteration school of magic, which only is needed to be an expert skill level of 75 before you can cast an open very hard lock spell made at a spellmaking altar. Like I said, even if I was role-playing, in what world wouldn't a thief want the skeleton key? So ultimately, I just think security is just a skill I would never pick as a major. Another of the low-hanging fruit we have is Speechcraft. Oblivion has always had this tedious speech minigame, which when playing OG Oblivion as a kid, I literally never bothered to learn. I'd just spam bribe as a warrior character, or if I had the illusion skill, I'd use charm to increase their disposition. But look, let's break it down. The main reason, outside of a niche role-playing thing, to never pick Speechcraft as a major skill, is that again, it is largely made redundant by other skills or attributes. The single goal of Speechcraft is to increase disposition with someone you are talking to. The two main aims of this result is to be able to haggle for better prices or to make someone like you enough to give you the information that you need to get. Outside of this, it doesn't really have any use. For starters, disposition will typically increase with most characters throughout the game as you increase your fame and of course as you complete side quests for them or join and advance through certain factions. Even the lowest personality characters will still make great friends through their journey. The second major factor is bribes. Perhaps if gold was very hard to come by, I'd change my opinion somewhat, but with regular looting and questing, you'll be able to amass a good chunk of change, and the 100 gold or so to pump a character's disposition high enough to get the information you need is not that outrageous, and for myself at least, I'd prefer this to the minigame any day. In the later game, this is even more pronounced as you will encounter leveled loot like Daedric and glass tier weapons and armor, which can be sold easily to jack up your bank account, making the pain of bribing so much less, and also by that point, most characters' starting disposition will also be higher because of your character's accrued fame by doing quests. All of this is without even talking about magic. With spellmaking, it is crazy easy to be pumping someone's disposition with a simple charm spell. Another big advantage, due to the nature of the dialogue and menu screen pausing the game, is that things like charm spells can be set to really high magnitude in spellmaking and made to have a very short duration, like 2 or 3 seconds, bringing their cost and skill requirement right down. So you can cast the spell on touch just before you talk to the person, and then the timer pauses while you are in dialogue so you can have all the benefits for the duration of your chat. It is unbelievably easy with charm spells to replicate the effects of a silver-tongued character with high speechcraft. But sure, maybe you don't use illusion, perhaps you're a paladin character with restoration skills. Restoration is undoubtedly one of the best skills in the game, and one of the main reasons for this is its incredible Fortify skill and Fortify attribute spells. Again, through spellmaking, which can be accessed through the Arcane University, or even earlier through the Frostcrag Spire. You can use shorter durations for spells with really high magnitude, temporarily boosting your personality attribute to something crazy, which boosts starting disposition with characters. Alternatively, you can even even boost your Speechcraft skill to 100 and just get the benefits without paying the price of focusing on leveling the skill. The big advantage here, unlike with the other spells fortifying skills, is that due to the nature of dialogue pausing the game, you can cast just before you activate talking and then enjoy the benefits for the entire duration of the dialogue, even if it was a 2 or 3 second spell, whereas the duration for fortifying skills like Blade or Destruction is relevant because they will run out during the course of combat. In summary, through charm spells, fortify Speechcraft or fortify personality spells, all with very low durations and to the highest possible magnitude for your skill level, will provide you with functionally the same outcomes, which is high disposition without having to invest in the Speechcraft skill or without actually having to play the tedious minigame. And the thing is, this is accessible for a low tier character even with novice level restoration. Even without magic, bribes aren't that painful in terms of cost, and that pain is only reduced as you get further into the game when 30 gold no longer feels like a big deal. I would even pick Mercantile over Speechcraft. Speaking of which, okay, the next skill I'd add to this list is Mercantile. The Mercantile skill essentially allows you to haggle for better prices. When you go to a vendor, you can open the haggle menu and push the slider further to the right, meaning you sell for more and buy for less. There are a few factors that determine how far you can push it, one being your disposition, meaning that all of the previously mentioned charm and fortify personality spell tricks will be beneficial here. Increase their disposition and you'll be able to push that slider further to the right while haggling. The other two factors are your mercantile skill and the vendor's mercantile skill. The higher your mercantile skill and the lower their mercantile skill, the better the haggling outcome. Remember, you have to actually haggle to change the prices until you have 100 mercantile, and then everything just sells and is bought for the base cost. With restoration again, you can actually make a fortify mercantile skill spell that lasts for 2 seconds, but with a really high magnitude, even at a novice skill level, and then enter dialogue immediately after, open up the menu, and you are functionally a gold tier salesman. For whatever reason, when you boost the skill artificially, you are still able to invest in the shop for 500 gold, which is an expert level milestone perk, permanently increasing their available gold for buying what you are selling. However, the other skill perks require you to actually have the raw mercantile skill. Speaking of which, this method with the restoration spell, which to reiterate any character can use, even at novice level, you just need a spell making altar, but this technique can be used to level your raw mercantile skill very fast because selling things for higher value contributes to more experience for the mercantile skill. The point is that you can access most of the benefits of a high mercantile skill character almost straight away, and this will always increase the actual skill at a faster rate, which is why I wouldn't recommend picking it as a major skill for a min-maxed build. Funnily enough, the upcoming Nightblade build is a Hlalu Dunmer character, which I did choose Mercantile for, but I'm fully aware that this isn't the stat-maxed choice, rather a role-playing motivated decision. Remember, these worst skills are based on a sort of power gaming perspective. It's also worth noting in general that if you're looting and questing often enough, money shouldn't be a problem, especially at the later levels when you start finding Daedric on every second bandit. Mercantile has increased usefulness if you have some kind of goal like buying every house and furnishing it all or something like that, but again, you can use the restoration fortify mercantile trick to get all of the riches. This one pains me a little bit. I love acrobatics, it's really damn cool to be able to jump across rooftops, and you best believe I will pick it for builds for the vibes alone. But if I'm being very critical, it isn't the most useful skill in the grand scheme of things. It's a rather niche role-playing pick. Even the cool little dodges, for the most part, just look cool and typically aren't that effective for actually avoiding damage. Look, acrobatics does technically increase your combat maneuverability, but even compared to just athletics, it falls more so into the niche category. Athletics, along with speed, determines your movement speed, your ability to strafe away from enemies as an archer or a spell-slinging mage, and it is what allows you to quickly close the distance as a warrior or battle mage, whereas acrobatics typically doesn't factor in to the active combat playstyle. It's useful for traversal, but let's be real. All weapon and armor skills, plus most magic skills, are going to provide a ton more usefulness for a character in combat. Plus, it goes without saying that restoration magic can be used to fortify it to crazy high levels for that one big jump you need to get get to a certain area. It's also pretty easy to level overall. I often find myself just compulsively jumping around for fun as I go from A to B. So look, it's not a vital skill for 90% of characters, but it often brings that fun vibe or feel to a build. I'd say it's more useful for archery characters so they can get to places and jump on rocks, forcing their enemies to try and go around the rock as you get off more shots, but again, it's not a top priority. It pains me to put it out there, but from a power gaming perspective, it's not an important skill at all. Compare it to athletics, which actually greatly factors into your combat effectiveness, especially if you are a heavy armor character. Nothing is worse than getting chewed out by a barrage of spells or arrows before you can actually get a look in damage-wise. Jump around enough while you're traveling around and about, and you will get this up high enough soon enough anyways. Another one that pains me, hand-to-hand, belongs in the list of the 6 worst skills. In OG Oblivion, you could actually make some crazy cool hand-to-hand builds that were really effective with Fortify Fatigue effects and how they affected damage, but it's changed for the worse. Now, in saying that, I have, after the Nightblade build, a really cool monk hand-to-hand build coming, though to really make it work, you're gonna have to get some of that monk magic involved, which is something that a blade, blunt, or marksman character doesn't need. A raw hand-to-hand fighter in Oblivion with no magic is going to have a bad time. For starters, you just simply do less damage, and once your strength attribute and hand-to-hand skill are maxed, there is no way to increase your damage further. Remember that besides acrobatics and athletics, increasing a skill beyond 100 has no effect. We obviously, being unarmed, don't have access to better and better weapons as we progress throughout the game. We also don't have the benefits of enchantments or poisons, both of which can be applied to weapons in order to further their damage. This leaves us with only bare knuckles and not a lot of options outside of supplementary magic. Don't get me wrong, this monk build I've cooked up is really fun, but picking hand-to-hand over a sword or an axe is purely motivated by role-playing. It's always less effective overall. Put it this way, even with the cool magic buffs and spells, if I applied those same principles to a blade build, its damage output and combat effectiveness would be miles better. It is what it is. I suppose it's realistic that a punch can't kill as quick as a sword or an axe, but after playing a monk in Baldur's Gate 3, I can't but wish that The Elder Scrolls 6 really provides some effective and powerful unarmed playstyles of a similar vein. Magic is really overpowered in Oblivion, with the god-tier broken restoration spells of fortifying attributes and skills, or the destruction multi-element, multi-weakness damage stacking spells. You can understand, actually, why they wanted to balance it out in Skyrim, even if they went a little far. However, there is one magic school that, for most intents and purposes, is a pretty poor skill outside of some niche uses. That magic skill is Mysticism. Now, when you go through the list of spell effects, you may at first think they are pretty useful, and look, they can be for niche builds, but it all feels very supplementary, and at that, most of the greater uses of Mysticism only come into play at the expert skill levels and beyond. Starting with the most important, Soul Trap is the main appeal of the Mysticism school, and it is accessible at an apprentice level, so it's not like we need to pick it as a major skill for leveling speed purposes, grinding it to 100 ASAP. Telekinesis, for the most part, is a bit of a meme. It looks cool, it's fun, it probably has some niche uses, but for the most part, it's a waste of magicka. Life Detection is handy for stealth builds, but nowhere near as much as Illusion's invisibility spells, or arguably even Alteration's open lock or feather spells for a thief or assassin type of character. Detect Life can also be found on purchasable enchanted items like the Eye of Sithis, or as random magical loot commonly enough, or as one effect of the Grey Fox Cow. Overall, it's a neat bonus, but nothing to deliberately seek out. Mysticism also has the Dispel spell, which cancels out any magical effects working upon you or your target, both beneficial and negative. It can be used to cancel enemy shields or weakness to element effects on yourself, but it doesn't affect powers, diseases, curses, or enchantment effects, meaning it won't stop you from being burnt if you're hit with a flaming sword with a duration effect, or it won't work against a Spriggan's Drain Luck effect because it's a lesser power, nor will it cancel out the annoying effects of diseases or poisons. Ultimately, using Dispel feels feels like such a niche situation that it's typically not worth using it, and you are far better off putting that magicka cost into slinging more destruction magic to end the combat quicker, or using defensive restoration or alteration magic to counteract a broader spectrum of damage than just the current duration of a spell effect working upon you. Mysticism also has spell reflection and spell absorption spells, but they feel niche and are often replaceable with enchantments or birth signs. For example, the master level legendary spell absorption spell for 25 points for 25 seconds may feel like it'd be crazy useful, but consider that you have to have a master level mysticism and have the magicka to cast it. Consider someone choosing the Atronach birth sign just straight out the gate has a permanent 50% spell absorption straight away. And the Atronach Stone Greater Power, Arcane Well, which is achievable from the stone at level 1, you can for 120 seconds take that 50% to 80% spell absorption without costing any magicka. That is not mentioning things like the Spell Drinker Amulet that you get through the Mages Guild questline, which depending on the level ranges from 9 points to 26 points of spell absorption. And there are also Sigil Stones with Transcendent ones offering 15 points of spell absorption for each enchanted item. Basically, if you're going for the whole spell absorption playstyle, you've probably already invested in the Atronach sign and enchanted gear, and especially so for an Atronach build. You don't want to be wasting your precious non-regenerating magicka with the Atronach sign on spell-absorbed spells. It's a magic skill that encompasses effects that are largely all niche, and mostly superseded by birth signs, enchantments, or the benefits of other magical schools. 9 times out of 10, I would recommend picking another magic school over mysticism. The only exception perhaps would be illusion, which I personally feel is really only a stealth build choice, but a super good one, as it effectively makes you a king of sneak with invisibility. With all that said, it is worth reiterating that picking any of these individual skills are perfectly fine as just role-playing preferences or for sake of ease. I pick them often enough. For example, I gladly had the mysticism skill for my sorcerer build because I didn't even want to have to think about leveling it for soul trap purposes and for RP reasons. Or the assassin build I had acrobatics for because it is really cool to jump around and have this Legolas tier archer and do circuits around arena foes as I pin them with my bow. I've also picked Mercantile for my upcoming Nightblade build because he is a Hlalu Dunmer with a penchant for greed. I want to be drowning in gold more than I need the gold. As much as this video is about skills from a power gaming perspective, I think people often forget that these games are RPGs, meaning role-playing games, meaning you should be able to be who you want to be, come up with a cool character, and just enjoy the vibes of different playstyles, or enjoy self-authored challenges like a no-weapons hand-to-hand build, like the monk we have after the Nightblade, or perhaps a pacifist arcanist thief build. There are of course always going to be the stat max deficiency king builds that are more overpowered, but hey, we play these games to have fun. Some of the best playthroughs I've ever had are far from the overpowered tier, but are instead more niche and role-playing oriented builds. Let me know your thoughts down below. More than anything, I'd love to hear about your best experiences using these worst skills in Oblivion Remastered. My name is Scott from Fudge Muppet, thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back to nerd out with you again next time.